traveling through another dimension, a dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land of the TV guys. I'm Matt.
I'm Brian. I'm not doing the voice.
Yeah, like you have to clarify. You're like, no, this ain't happening, guys. This is a Matt thing. Didn't even know about it.
I never know what you're going to say, which I give you. I throw you for some loops too sometimes.
You do. You absolutely do. So, well, Twilight Zone is a completely different dimension. I loved Twilight Zone. I thought it was so interesting. It's a fun show, had some good movies. Have you watched, next week we're going to talk about reboots, but have you watched the reboot with Jordan Peele that they came out with?
I have not.
What is it? It's like on one of those streaming services, you're like, oh, no one subscribes to this. Like CBS All Access or some crap like that.
Well, CBS All Access is now merged with Paramount Plus.
So it might be on there and you might be able to watch it. So,
Maybe.
maybe. But so I haven't seen it either, so I can't really talk to it. But we are today going to talk about what is the best fictional universe to live in. And not as like a main character. So like, if you and I are like, let's live in Lost, neither of us get to be Jack or Sawyer. We're gonna be Frogurt guy. We're gonna be that background extra who dies in the third episode.
Yeah, exactly. This was a very tough one. When we had this idea, I'm like, oh yeah, this would be cool. And I was thinking about it. Every show I could think of that has a unique world to live in, I don't want to live in that world. Like you said, Lost. Like I love Lost. Lost is a great show to watch. But yeah, I counted. There's like 9 people who are on the flight who end up still alive at the end, and that includes the dog and the baby who wasn't born yet.
Yeah, and like I love like superhero stuff, and so like I like Marvel Agents of Shield, but I don't want to exist in that world because I wouldn't be the superhero. I wouldn't be the Agents of Shield. I'd be that one guy running away, like this huge thing's gonna destroy us in the background. That's me. That's who I am.
I don't, and I wouldn't want to live in the Power Rangers world because I don't want to live where a giant monster might step on my house every week.
Every week. I don't care what you say, Power Rangers. Teach us your anti-violence methods, but then all of a sudden you guys have no problem fighting aliens and turning into a big Megazord. All right, I see how it is.
Exactly. So this was tough.
I feel like I have the right answer. Usually when we're talking about stuff like it's very opinion based, I'm going to say my answer is actually the right answer. So
yep. Normally I go first, but you're so excited. Let's have Matt. What is the right answer?
I want to go last because I want to top yours because that's just how selfish and narcissistic I am.
Well, I don't have the confidence that you. I'm not saying mine is the right answer, but I was thinking what I want to do. I want to be a parent on Disney Channel.
And let's be clear, a Disney Channel show, not a Disney movie, because if you're a parent on Disney movie, you have a 50-50 shot of being dead.
Yeah. No, and I'm not talking about animated. I'm talking about live action Disney Channel show. I'll be a parent in any of those shows because, for one thing, no one has any real problems in that show. They all have, like, no one has to worry about making rent or, or money stuff or jobs. Everyone, like, the parents, because they're not the focus of it, the parents just get a job and they get to just be off in the background. Like, I would love to just be off in the background.
Oh my god. You can't do visual gags on an audio podcast.
Done it before, I'm doing it now.
All right, let me explain this real quick. He's talking about himself in the background. He just completely switched his background on his Zoom call to a picture of him standing in the same background he was doing with big thumbs up over his shoulder. So I have to be looking at 2 Brians right now on my screen. That's my life, guys.
I'm going to leave that up for a little bit. Yeah, I did that earlier.
Here's what I was going to say real quick before we continue, because you got some other good stuff. If you do have money problems as an adult in the Disney Channel world, don't worry. They're solved at the end of the episode. They're solved within a half hour or in a week or a day, however long the episode takes.
Exactly. Either you have someone who's super rich, like London in the Sweet Life shows, where she can be like, oh, you need money? Here's $1 million. Or else, the park, they're going to tear down a tree in the park and someone's going to come in at the last minute. Oh, it's a historical landmark now. And like I said, all of your problems, they're not going to be that big to begin with, probably. And if they are, they're going to get solved by some lesson, and you just get to go off, and especially as a parent or as an adult in these shows, you get to just not even be in some episodes because it focuses on the kids and the teens because that's what their demographic, and so I can just go live my life. Like I like just hanging out at home, eating a bag of barbecue potato chips and watching TV. I don't have to go and have all the adventures. And this world is not going to suck me into it. And when it does, it could be fun ones, like when Lewis and his dad found a tunnel to a hidden golden sausage in their basement. That'd be cool to do.
I love how you say that so nonchalant.
Yeah,
A big tunnel to a golden sausage. That would be fun. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it would be fun. That's a way to
Yeah, if you want
describe
to know
it.
what I'm talking about, go to Disney Plus, Even Stevens, the episode Raiders of the Lost Sausage. It's a good episode. And then there's or like the dad on Wizards of Waverly Place. He just gets to own his New York deli restaurant, and his kids can go off and be wizards and do stuff, and he doesn't have to worry about it.
I've never had to wonder about my kids going off and being wizards. I've never had that personal experience in my life.
Yeah, it just seems like a good gig. Like I said, those are fun shows to watch. Like there's never, and like I said, there's never any real problems. The parents get to do their own thing. Every now and then they get to go into the action. Every now and then there's an episode that might be a little bit more serious, but in general, it just seems like a cushy job.
Yeah, Brian, I'm gonna give this one to you. This is a good pick. It's one that I wouldn't have thought of, and I really love the creativity and thought that went behind it. And I was ready, like, okay, I'm gonna attack it. So I'm trying to find really bad things about this. And I guess the thing that I would find is a lot of these parents are stupid. They
Yes.
they get played for laughs. They get dunked on, so to speak, by the kids.
Hmm.
They are often the butt of the jokes, and when something goes wrong, it always affects them. So yeah, you do have to deal with the pratfalls in your life.
Yeah.
But I mean, compared to the stresses of a modern day world as an adult, you can tell that this was come up with by a parent.
Hmm. Definitely. It's like once you start identifying with the parents in Disney Channel shows, you realize you've crossed the line that you can't go back. Like
You're like, I wish it was this easy to discipline them. I wish that they just heard it and then they could communicate their feelings in a grown up adult way.
I watch Even Stevens as an adult. I still like the show, but so often I'm thinking, man, Lewis is so freaking annoying.
I always found, even though people liked him, I always found Beans so annoying. I couldn't deal.
Beans has to be in small doses for me.
Yeah. Sorry if you're a Beans lover, but
Yeah,
the
they did
truth.
a Zoom reunion with that show with most of the cast. They're just talking about it, and it's kind of cool because Beans was like the most excited to be there. He was just super excited to like talk about the show with the rest of the cast.
Yeah. I bet. Man, it would be. I mean, I don't think any of them, except for Shia LaBeouf, went on to really do anything else. I mean, the dad has always had like bit parts and stuff. The dad was kind of like this character actor that you've seen pop
Yeah,
up and stuff. But really, there's no one else in that show that I'm like, oh yeah, I see them in other ones. Not even the sister, who she like was being groomed to be a Disney Channel celebrity and do a lot of other stuff.
the only other big thing that she did was she was Kim Possible.
Yeah, I mean, and then she was also what was the other one? Was she Cadet Kelly? Was that what it
Yes,
was?
it was her and Hillary Duff were both in Cadet
Yeah,
Kelly.
yeah.
I watched that last summer. It's pretty good.
Man, it is so funny to like our age demographic to talk about Disney Channel original movies because there's no other generation because either the older generations didn't care at that time or the
Hmm.
younger generations that, like you're not going to watch these on reruns.
Yeah.
So there's this peak amount of time where you can tell the age of someone based on if you say the word Xenon Girl of the 21st century and they know
Oh
what you're
yeah,
talking about or not.
I remember that. Or like I remember this is embarrassing. You know, remember back when video stores were a thing? You could go there and
Yes.
get a physical tape. Yeah.
Yep.
So I remember when the Lizzie McGuire movie came out, I was going to rent it, but I was embarrassed. So I grabbed a cell phone and pretended to be talking to my cousin on the phone. I'm like, yeah, Shelly, I'll get you the Lizzie McGuire movie. It's fine. Stop bugging me. Like,
That is a great story. That is the best story. This is why we do this podcast, so I can find out these embarrassing things that you don't realize you're sharing in front of a live audience here. It's
our
not
audience is
live.
live.
I was gonna say it's not live.
I'm in my bedroom with a muffin and some water.
You don't know this, but I have people hiding underneath my bed. So,
That seems like a you problem.
I was speaking of Disney Channel original movies. People living under your bed. What was that? Don't look under the bed or something
Yes.
like that. That's what
with
it was.
I think that was with the guy who played Larry Beale on Even Stevens.
Think you're right. Yeah, I know that I knew him from some other Disney Channel. That movie like has been in my mind ever since I've seen it because I really like the idea. Because okay, real quick before we get into my pick and before we wrap up here, the idea of this movie is this person has an invisible friend, and then there's I don't remember all the different plots. At some point, it's about like this boogeyman that lives under the bed, and they're trying to stop this boogeyman. Well, anyway, they find out through the course of things that boogeymen are just invisible friends that have been forgotten about. And when they're forgotten about, then they turn into the boogeyman. And I'm
Huh.
like, that is such a smart idea. That is a great twist. I mean, the rest of
Yeah.
it was cheaply made because it's a Disney original movie.
Yeah.
But that little piece of idea, I'm like, that is a lot smarter than this movie is worth.
Kind of seemed a little bit they use some of those through lines in the movie Coco, I think, don't they?
Yeah, I like that idea. They use the idea of like once you're forgotten, that's the second death, and that was a really good use in Coco.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, all right. Hey, good pick.
All right, Disney Channel Dad's my pick. What's your pick?
My pick is Star Trek. And here's why. Star Trek is such an awesome universe. I know some people are like, oh, Star Trek, I don't even like space. Well, guess what? You don't have to be in space. There's whole planets of people who they don't even care about going up into space. You're fine. You know what you need to worry about with Star Trek is the fact that it's a freaking utopia. The whole idea is that humanity has evolved beyond the cultural problems that we have nowadays. There's no such thing as racism. There's no such thing as poverty. There's no such thing as sickness. There's no such thing as world hunger or thirst. There's all these problems that are of our modern day that have been solved in the Star Trek universe. And you don't have to be Captain Picard to be able to take advantage of all these wonderful things. Are you hungry? Well, guess what? Everyone has the capability to have a food processor, and that can come up with any type of food that you could ever possibly want. Do you want to have your favorite food for the rest of your life? Well, guess what? They're going to turn water into this food, and so it's going to be healthy for you, and you can eat this healthy version of Five Guys and their big sack of potatoes of French fries that they give you with every meal. You can eat that every meal for the rest of your life if you want to. Well done. Do you want to travel? Great. Well, there's a way to travel. You can go through space, and that's fine. Do you want to live out any of your greatest fantasies? There's something called a holodeck, and they have the technology to recreate very realistic fantasies that you might ever have that would be a lot of fun. You want to play a video game in real life? Like, do you want to be Master Chief in Halo? You can create a program that does that. There's actually an episode, one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek Voyager was the doctor who's a hologram in it.
Hmm.
He creates a holodeck family, and so he has like this family that's like this idyllic family. He's got two kids and a wife, and he's made him like 1950s Stepford version where it's like everyone's like, oh gee shucks, kind of like what you're talking about with as a dad from Disney.
Yeah.
That is like all of my kids, they always get along, everything's great, we all learn our lessons, all that stuff. And it was funny. There was another person with them who he like brought to meet his family, and they're like, "This isn't how real families are." And that episode was actually really good because she kind of, in a way, turned up the difficulty level, so to speak, of being a dad in a family. It's the next time he came in, like the kids are fighting, and he's like, "This isn't my family." Like it was like actual real problems, and like then he had to deal with a tragedy in his family too, and he's like, "I can't handle this." It was a really well done episode. I don't know why I got sidetracked on that, but living out your fantasy and the holodeck. What else? They don't use money, so everyone can use anything that they want. You can do whatever you want to do, and you don't have to just get in this stuck in this minimum wage job that you don't want to do. You can actually do what you're passionate about. It's like any way you slice it, Star Trek world is perfect to me.
As you're going on this rant about it, and I agree, like this sounds pretty cool. I was trying to think of ways to like jab at it. And all I got is, you know what if in this utopian society where everything's great, what if I want to listen to a comedian like Lewis Black talk rant about how things are terrible?
Well, you can listen to the historical archives of Lewis Black from hundreds of years before. No, like I think one of the downsides, that you could bring up is like, well, they do have conflict. Because I like when they first created this, Gene Roddenberry created this in the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
then people were like, Gene, you can't have a perfect society and then have a television show about this. There's no conflict. You
Yeah.
can't have a show without conflict. And so like they would create some conflict. They invented like the Klingons to be a race that was antagonistic them. So there's always like races that are antagonistic, but
Mm.
to be honest, you only really bump into them if you're a member of Starfleet, the ones who are like exploring new territory and going out into these worlds that like no one has gone to before or have gone to very few times. So, I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't leave the planet, you're probably safe.
Yeah. And that'd be me. Like, here's the thing. I'm not saying like I'd never like to travel, like, but like I don't like to travel towards danger. I don't know who does, but like my idea of a great vacation is like going to Universal Studios in Orlando and going on some of those roller coasters. Like that's what I want to do. I don't want to go like explore the people who are trying to kill us. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'd live in that world.
I really like too how even like you see it progress in the Star Trek generations that like the original Star Trek, the bad guy with the Klingons. Well, guess what? At the end of that original series and in Star Trek Next Generation, there's been so much peace that has happened between humans and Klingons had been inducted into the Federation. So like they're able, even this like reckless, harsh, hard people that previously were terrorists, they're like there's now this inclusion and being able to accept them and bring them into like a United Nations, but for space races. So then they had to bring a new bad guy. So they had like Romulans. Romulans became the new bad guy. Well, at the end of the Star Trek Next Generation series in the final movie, there was like these hints that they were getting to a spot of peace. In fact, we see in the J.J. Abrams one, there's like a web comic that goes with the J.J. Abrams first reboot, where like Data was the captain of a starship and like he was working with Romulans and so was Spock. He was working with Romulans because they had reached a spot where they're feeling a little more peaceful before the planet actually got destroyed, which started the chain events of Nero going back in time and changing the past. So, I mean, it's like there's such this captivation with world peace and working together that even the enemies, even the Borg, who are like I'm going to assimilate you into my race and like we are terrorizing the whole space. Like even then, there was a character who was reformed from being a Borg, who was a regular in the Star Trek Voyager series. So like they have these possibilities that they're bringing in these races that don't know anything about war and they're teaching them peace. And it's like it's a really awesome message. And it would be great to live in a world that could do that.
So I have a confession to make. I know we've made fun of Matt for not watching Cheers or Fresh Prince or Criminal Minds. And if by chance our friend Wilbur is listening, don't listen to this part, Wilbur. I've never seen any of Star Trek.
And that's not a problem. It's fine. Like Star Trek is a very specific thing. If you watch the Star Trek movies that I referenced, the reboot ones, those aren't Star Trek. Those aren't like how Star Trek is classic. Because Star Trek is all about like diplomacy and it's about like this metaphor of what's going on. So like there's so many episodes that would really tie into like hot button issues of the day where they're like, oh, let's talk about race relations and let's go ahead and do a Star Trek episode that's a metaphor for that, or a metaphor. There's some really, really deep episodes, especially I think of Star Trek Next Generation, that deal with some very human issues, and they do it in such a unique way that's why people love Star Trek. It's not because they're like, let's blow everything up. It's because it's kind of like a space opera play, where they're dealing with these things. It's really well done for the most part.
Well, I might get into it because now this is for everyone listening. If you have Paramount Plus, all of the Star Treks looks like are on Paramount Plus. The original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, all of it. So I have like a whole list of things I'm going to be watching. So I might jump into and checking out some Star Trek. Where would you think I should start?
I think the best bridge for that would actually be Next Generation, because I
Okay.
think for me, from what I've seen, it's my favorite, but it's also the best bridge of classic Star Trek, what it's really about. Also, at the same time, it's the like modern-ish, where it's the very very classic '60s one that feels so dated. Even the first season of Star Trek Next Generation feels a lot more dated than some of the other seasons.
Yeah.
And it's gonna feel a '90s show at that
Yeah.
point, but it's as modern as you can get while still having the classic Star Trek feel.
Yeah. So let us know if you would rather be in the Utopian Society of Star Trek, or you'd rather be a Disney Channel dad, or if you have a whole completely third answer.
What was another one? Because there's another one that I was thinking about before even talking about this, and I can't remember. Why am I even bringing this up if I can't remember what it was? Hang on, let me think for a second, because there's one that I'm like, I want to talk about this. It would be there. You're still looking at me in the background of your picture, and it's still creeping me out, man.
I was thinking about taking it down, but I'll just leave it up. Another one that it would be easy, but there's not a ton to talk about is any of these sitcoms like How I Met Your Mother or Friends, because again, like they're able to afford these giant apartments on like no salary, and they all have their fun hangout place where they go to the either the bar or the coffee shop. It kind of reminds me of when like you and I and a bunch of other people would go out every Wednesday to like Applebee's or something. That was fun.
Yeah, I think as I was trying to look for mine, I saw just something that pops up. I'm like, this would be up your alley. If you lived in the world that's the Muppet world, where it's like the real world, but now there's Muppets everywhere as well. Like,
Yeah,
you would love that, Brian. I'm surprised that that wasn't part of your answer.
I considered it actually, but I once I landed on the Disney Channel dad, I had to go with that. But yeah, it would be awesome to get to know some of these characters. And if that were true, if it were the Muppet who were real, by now, I mean, most of the Muppet characters are not performed by the original performers. They've either died or retired then died. If you talk to the guy who's performing Kermit now, he doesn't have the memories of Jim Henson doing the Muppet Show 40 years ago. But if the characters were real, you could say like, "Hey, Kermit, what was it like working with Steve Martin on the Muppet Show?" Like it'd be cool to like meet up with them at like Comic-Con and like ask them questions.
Yeah. Now, like with that side of it too, they're going to be like celebrities. So it'd be like, it's really hard to actually be able to talk with them. But like, there would be other Muppets that you get to know and be like, well, what's it like being a Muppet? How is life different for you than for me? Plus,
Mm-hmm.
also they're indestructible, so you can do whatever you want; they won't die. So,
Exactly. Just talk about ages. So, Robin, you've been five for like 45 years.
yeah. How did you freeze time? I don't understand.
hmm No, it would be really cool to talk about any of the Muppet worlds if they were real. That'd be awesome.
Nice. And speaking of freezing time, the other one that I had thought about that would be fun to like bring up. This might be a fun world to visit more than it is to live in. But for the show Once Upon a Time, because Once Upon a Time, it takes classic fairy tales and combines them with our real world. And there's like a fairy tale land, so to speak. And then there's a city that all these fairy tales live in. And then there's the rest of the world. And so as the seasons go on, that city that they all live in, it's actually, speaking of stuck in time, it's actually stuck in time in that city because of the spell that Regina, the mean witch from Snow White, that she cast on that town. But once the spell's broken, then they bring in magic into the real world, and so magic
Huh.
then exists in the actual America and the whole planet Earth. And so then these characters start to spread out a little bit more. And every now and then, like, they will leave this town, and we see glimpses of them as like, Pinocchio at one point, he traveled to Asia, and we see him at the beginning of a series, like seeking wisdom from someone who has gone to the fairy tale world, and he's living in Asia now. So I mean, like, these characters can leave that town now. So it'd be really interesting to find go talk with these characters, and then like see some of the stuff that they're going through, and maybe even travel yourself to this fairy tale land. That'd be fun, although it's dangerous.
Yeah. When shows and movies do that, where like they bring fictional characters into the real world, I feel like it's really hit or miss. It's either like really good and really funny, or it's really not.
Yeah. Have you seen any episodes of Once Upon a Time?
Maybe one like a long time ago. That's another one of my gaps that I have.
They used a number of actors from Lost, and then they also have the writers from Lost as well.
Hmm.
And it's also the same format where it's like each episode, as they're having their thing going on in this real world, it will do these flashbacks to them in fairy tale land and how that applies to what they're
Okay.
going through.
They had Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse in there.
I believe so. Either
Hmm.
one of them or both of them.
Okay, I like to think of them as Darlton.
The Darlton Initiative.
Yeah. So Matt, we talked about this earlier. There are some worlds like Lost where it's a great to watch, but I would not want to live there. Like okay, Mandalorian and anything Star Wars. I don't want to live in the world because
Yeah,
it seems like no matter what's going on, no matter what my role would be, my chances of dying would be like 50-50 every day. Is some giant like sand monster going to come up and eat me? Is the if even if I'm working at some place, is it going to be some set of a lightsaber battle or some Jedi going to come in and cause trouble with someone? Like I don't want to have to worry about like a battle coming in my front
yeah,
door every day.
yeah. Me too. There's some obvious ones that are like, there's no way. I want like Walking Dead. No, thank you. I'm not
No.
even. I know some people like they have like this zombie fantasy in their head.
Hmm.
Like I just want to live there for like a week. And if I die, then I get transported back here. Like I want there to be no risk, and I want to be there for a week just to see if I can make it through. I was like, no, I don't. I don't want that. I don't want to know what that's like. I'm
No.
okay where I'm at right now.
Yeah, anything like horror related, like
You don't want American Horror Story. You don't want to live there, and any of the chapters.
I've only seen a little bit of the hotel one, but no, I don't. And like Supernatural, I've been slowly watching some episodes of that because like I've only seen about the first half of that series, but no, because if that was the real world, then like again, there's millions of things that can kill you every moment with werewolves and vampires and you name it, they kill it on that show.
Yeah, Firefly is another one that I'm like, no, I'm good because it's a broken society, and you're the other part is that yeah, there's always a lot of things that can kill you, but there's these things. I don't know if you've been watching any of Firefly or gotten into it. There's some characters that pop up. It's a race called Reavers that are
Mhm.
essentially space zombies in a way. So like at any point they can attack you and get you and just murder you in terrible ways. So it's like you always have to live with that.
I did watch the pilot of Firefly, and I saw Mrs. Feeney there.
Oh, was she in that?
She was the woman who they tried to buy stuff from, and then she tried to kill him. She was like the cowboy at the planet that.
That's right. Yep, I remember that.
Mm, I saw her name in the credits. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, wasn't that a good episode? That's a great starting episode.
Yeah, that was it. I got a lot on my plate TV wise, and then there's also the whole having a real life with real responsibilities, which
Yep.
whatever. But TV wise, I have a lot to watch.
Too bad Firefly or Fox didn't air that episode as the pilot episode.
They,
Instead, they aired an episode called The Train Job, which the episode isn't bad, but it's not the pilot. The pilot is very clearly a pilot.
yeah, it introduces what's going on. It introduces kind of like we said, the episode you gave me to watch introduced how all the characters who were already there got there, but then like all the rest of them, we see how they got there. Like it's the origin story.
Yeah. And they even have a little bit of a mystery in it at the beginning of like, well, who's the bad guy on the ship? Well, if you know who the series regulars are, you know that they're not the bad guys. You
Yeah,
know that you know a little bit more about their story. So you already know that like, they're the red herring, that they're the ones in trouble.
or it could have been a thing where like they were initially bad and they get turned, or something like that.
Yeah. So like you watch the train job and you see them already a part of the crew. And then they go to this episode later. People are like, wait, what? I'm confused.
Kind of like I forget if we've talked about this in the podcast. I've heard that in any movie, Apple won't let the villain of the movie use Apple products. So sometimes you can figure out process of elimination. If they have an iPhone, they can't be the villain. And I guess in the movie Knives Out, you can see some characters who don't end up being the killer with iPhones.
I didn't realize that. I think I had heard that because that sounds right, and that also sounds like Apple. Like they're
Yeah.
powerful. They're like, no, you aren't gonna do this. Only cool people use Apples.
Hmm.
Make them have a PC. Put a Windows logo on it,
Hmm.
just for fun.
Yeah. Which is why, like, just to mock it, in a lot of these Nickelodeon teen shows, they have pair phones and pair pods.
It's fun to see like in Practical Jokers too. Like whenever they have a computer challenge, they're gonna block if they're using an Apple product, they're gonna block the Apple on the back so that they aren't advertising it. So it's like you could tell you're on a hidden camera show if someone's blocking the logo on their computer. It's such an
Mm,
obvious tell for you.
yeah. I'm trying to think. Do you got? I think that's all I got for today. I think I talked about everything I would and wouldn't want to live in.
Yeah, me too. Anyway, we want to hear from you guys because there's a lot of shows and there's a like this was hard because there is a number of shows too. I mean, my number one was easy for sure, but there's a lot of shows that's like, well, that's essentially the world I'm living in. So it's
Yeah.
like you said, How I Met Your Mother or any of those type shows.
The main difference with those things is just like their lives are more interesting. Like I don't know if you remember this, Matt. Way back when I got really into the idea of like pretending my life was like a TV show, kind of like Abed,
Yeah,
but in
I
the fact that
remember.
I would write it out like, okay, in this would be in this season, this would be the series regulars, this would be the series regulars. But everyday life for me is not that interesting. Like I feel like in the average person's life, you might have a few interesting stories here and there that could have made good TV, but you're not going to have like 8 or 9 years of consistently interesting things happening to you that people would want to watch. So
Yeah,
it's just a little bit suspended disbelief, a little bit more fantastical, and a little bit more interesting. But yeah, it's just day to day life.
yeah. That's why you see shows like The Office where it seems like they jumped the shark, where it just completely changes. Because I mean, you look at the first three seasons, and there's a lot of really, honestly, Office type related humor in those first three seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it becomes more like almost the setting becomes an impediment because they're focused more on the characters and the silliness and the crazy situations that they create, and it's less about like the, oh, we have a boss who's like that, or like jokes about memos and emails and all of that sort of stuff that goes into like mocking an actual
Yeah.
workplace.
Oh, we do have some announcements I forgot to do earlier.
Oh,
One is we talked about this. You guys might know. By the time you're listening to this, you can go to Disney Plus and watch the new Mighty Ducks reboot. It's going to be a show on Disney Plus. They got Emilio Estevez back, and then there's going to be one episode where they get 6 of the original Mighty Ducks to come back for a guest appearance. So I'm excited to watch that. And I don't know. I feel like if it's good, we might do an episode about it here. If not,
yeah.
then we'll just tell you it sucks. But
I read a review, and the review of the first couple episodes, it says it's like, this is good and it's on the right track, but it feels like it's a retread and it has room to grow. So hopefully it does. So
true.
I mean, it's very possible for that to happen, and I'm
Mm,
sure I know I'm going to watch it regardless.
yep.
And next week we're talking about reboots, so we'll probably even bring it up as we talk about it
Yep.
next week.
Another announcement we have is that they finally announced that Survivor is cleared to start production in Fiji again on season 41. So I think coming this fall, we will finally have another season of Survivor to watch.
That's not something I care about, but I'm glad you do.
If you don't, you should because it's really good.
I watched like I watched like 6 years of it, so it's like 10 to 12 seasons of it,
Yeah.
and eventually got to be like, it's kind of the same thing a lot over and over with
Yeah,
good
but then
people.
there's different people every time. The last one was interesting because it was called Winners at War, so it was all previous winners on the season, and they bumped up the prize to $2 million.
Nice. Who won?
Tony Vlachos, who originally won Kagayan season 28. And
I
yes,
don't
I
know that person. So,
I can name all 40 winners in order and the seasons.
oh my gosh, of course you can.
Yeah. Here, give me a number 1 through 40.
37.
37 was David versus Goliath. Nick Wilson won. And he was the most recent
Jeez.
winner on Winners at War.
I did this. I used to have this, and I might still have it, but I used to have that with Pixar movies in order. I could name all the Pixar movies.
I can't name them in order. Maybe I'll put this on Facebook. I have a Photoshop that I put on where it's all of the main Pixar characters all together, and then I still have that document where I can move them around. So every time Pixar comes out with a new movie, I add them in there. So I just added Soul, I added Joe, and as well as the Soul versions of both Joe and Soul 22, and then I also added the cat in this big, huge group shot of all the Pixar main characters.
Nice. All right. Any other announcements from you?
Nope, just the Survivor, which apparently Matt doesn't care about, and the Mighty Ducks.
And I shut that announcement down so quick. Hey, here's the Survivor announcement. Who cares? Oh, okay. Hey, so do you remember the trivia question from last week?
Trivia question last week was yours. It was about a guest star on Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of Mighty Ducks, so guest star on the episode I was talking about, I can't remember I think it was called Sweet Surrender. Yeah. Episode Sweet Surrender that I talked about in the last episode that made me cry, really sad. the guest star was Eldon Hansen, who is in Mighty Ducks. He is one of the Basher brothers. He was the one that was in the first movie. What was his name? I can't remember what his name was.
Fulton Reed.
Fulton, that's right. And he played Foggy in the Netflix Daredevil TV show. He's actually got a lot of work in the last couple of years.
Yep. And he is one of the Ducks that's going to be making the guest appearance in the new Mighty Ducks show.
Yep, he reminds me actually of a friend of mine. I don't know if he listens to my podcast, but I'll if I tell him I'm shouting him out, then he might. But he reminds me of a friend, Brian Almond, that I know. He's a good guy. So if you know him, tell him.
You know, he was my roommate in college for one semester.
No way. Was he?
He was.
Do you agree? Does he remind you of Eldon Hansen?
I could see that.
Okay. He also said that he met my doppelganger at like this convention, and he took a picture of this guy and sent it to me. And I was like, okay, I don't think that I look like that, but sure. Speaking of doppelgangers, you got a guy right behind you.
Oh, that guy
looks a lot like you.
This side?
Wrong side. Yep, there you go.
My screen is reversed.
Sure.
All right. So I have a trivia question this week. So I was talking about Disney Channel dads. So what Disney Channel dad actually comes from a famous family, and he has his own famous dad who was a big actor, comedian from way back in the day. For instance, his dad was the first celebrity guest appearance on the Muppet movie.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
To make it clear, this guy, his son is a Disney Channel dad. If you know, give us a shout out on Facebook, TV Guys, Twitter, TV Guys 1, and email tvguyspodcast@gmail.com.
Guys, we only have one Twitter follower. Only one. Just one lonely Twitter follower.
Wait,
I don't know if we've even followed. I don't know if. Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, you don't count. I don't count. You're a part of this thing. All right. Well, hey, until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And you are in the Twilight Zone.